This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, ho there, it's Jeff Cutastrophe welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, June 29th, 1992, although I don't know why, I think it was June 30th, 1992 for some odd reason. But, my stupid thing said it was June 29th, so I'll go with it. Anyhow, Eric Lindros became the leader of the Philadelphia Flyers. He was now a Philadelphia Flyer in a big trade with the Quebec Nordiques, who had drafted him first overall. Leading the New York Rangers, not so off. So anyway, some context. Eric Lindros was this Canadian prospect who dominated Canadian Major Junior, helping the 1990 Oshawa Generals win the Memorial Cup against the Kitchener Rangers, which just pissed me right off. Although, it must be said, all 6 times Kitchener Rangers have been to the Memorial Cup, they've been to the final at the very worst. So that's kind of creepy. Anyway, yeah, he was a prospect. He was helping Canada out. In 91, helped Canada win the gold medal on home turf in Saskatchewan, which was the first time TSN decided to do the World Juniors, and it's a tradition that TSN has held ever since. Because CBC used to do select World Junior games, but not all of them. Anywho, Eric Lindros was this big guy. Unfortunately, there was a downside to Eric. His play was great, but off the ice, things weren't so great. Because his coaches and general managers of his junior teams feared one thing: the helicopter parenting of one Carl and also Bonnie Lindros. Carl and Bonnie would call the coach and say, why is he not getting ice time? Why is his teammates sucking and all that? It was their influence that Eric Lindros was supposed to be a Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound in the OHL, but they didn't want him to go to Sault Ste. Marie. They wanted him close to home. So the Greyhounds traded him to Oshawa. And it worked out great for the Generals. Anyway, Eric Lindros was the number 1 prospect for the 91 draft. The only problem was the Quebec Nordiques were terrible. They were the worst team in the NHL, and before the draft lottery started in 1995, they got the number 1 pick. So the first pick went to Quebec. The second pick went to the expansion San Jose Sharks. The number 3 pick was supposed to be the Toronto Maple Leafs, but Toronto stupidly traded it to New Jersey, the first round pick to New Jersey, for the one Tom Curvers in 1989. So anyway, Eric Lindros is an icon. Now what I'm getting, am I getting texts from Eric Lindros? I'm getting something. Something, baby doll. What is going on? Yeah, someone's making puns at me. Anyway, so Eric Lindros did not want to go to Quebec. A lot of people assumed it was because of the culture and him speaking French and all that, and that Lindros wanted to go to a big name team. But unfortunately, Quebec called his bluff and said, we're drafting Eric Lindros. He was supposed to be the Canadian prospect that was going to help the Nordiques get out of the basement of the NHL. But of course, he refused to put the jersey on. He was picked first overall. The Sharks also botched their pick. They took Pat Phily, who was part of the Memorial Cup winning Spokane Chiefs. And he was supposed to help the Sharks do well. Unfortunately, though, he was terrible. In fact, with the second pick the Sharks ever had in the NHL draft, they took his teammate, Ray Whitney. And Ray Whitney is a Sharks legend, scoring that famous double overtime goal in 1995 to sink the Flames in the first round. So that's funny how, Pat Flynn was overshadowed by his teammate, Ray Whitney, his junior teammate. And the third pick was for New Jersey's, because Toronto traded it, and Toronto was the second worst team in the NHL, was Scott Niedermayer. And you could imagine how great Scott Niedermayer was in the NHL for the Devils and the Ducks. I still consider him a Devils icon. Fight me. Anyway, the Nordiques could have taken Scott Niedermayer. He probably would have stayed in Quebec. But anyway, yeah. There was no option for Toronto to take Eric Lindros because, of course, Eric Lindros couldn't go to Toronto because they traded their first round pick for Tom Kurvers. I used to call him Tom Cruvers, but now it's Kurvers. So yeah, so Eric Lindros decided to go back to junior and dominate junior rather than go to Quebec. The worst part was that Lindros was actually picked to play for the Canadian team in the Canada Cup. And guess where one of the games was? Quebec City. Fortunately, though, Lindros did a good job in that game. But, the fans would really boo Lindros. Canada did win the Canada Cup, though. Or what we call the World Cup of Hockey now. Anyway, so Lindros was doing it for Oshawa. Unfortunately, Oshawa wasn't really that good. He played for Canada in the 92 World Juniors, and they had a terrible time in Germany. They were 6th, one of the worst finishes in Canadian history. So, anyway, Lindros was there. Now, the problem was that Quebec was kind of pressured into making something about Lindros because if you are a draft pick, but you don't sign with your team, in 2 years you're eligible to go back into the draft. So the NHL thought that, someone in 93 would take him, like Ottawa. Well, Ottawa would have taken him. It doesn't matter. So anyway, the league put pressure on Quebec to do something about Lindros. So Marcel Wu had no choice but to trade him. Who was going to get him, Philadelphia or New York? Well, they both said, we got Lindros on the outset in the 1992 NHL draft, June 20th. The only problem was that, who had him? It was weird and all that. So, anyway, 80 minutes after agreeing with the Flyers deal, Abu backtracked and decided to trade him to New York. The Flyers were upset that the Nordiques would renege and all that. So the NHL appointed Larry Bertuzzi, a lawyer from Toronto, and whose nephew Todd Bertuzzi played in the NHL, as the arbitrator. After a 5-day hearing, it was found out that Quebec had a deal with Philadelphia first, and that Abu could not pull out of it. So it worked out. It was a good trade and all that. So anyway, there's a lot of aftermaths and all that. So the Flyers got Eric Lindros and traded back to Quebec. Steve Duchesne, the rights to Peter Forsberg, who still had not played in the NHL. Ron Hextall, Kerry Huffman, Mike Ricci, Chris Simon, first round pick in 93 and first round pick in 94. And $15 million, which is a lot in those days, and maybe today to some people. So, did the Flyers make the right move with Quebec? The answer is yes, but for the wrong side. The Flyers thought they were fleecing Quebec by taking this Eric Lindros guy and sending Quebec some other players. But, in fact, it actually worked out on the opposite side. Lindros was great. Lindros won the 1995 MVP and helped the Flyers get to the 97 Stanley Cup Finals. Being swept by Detroit was not good. Unfortunately, Lindros' time after 97 would be marred with controversy. Concussions, especially one in Nashville that he almost died in the hotel room in Nashville. True story. And his falling out with Bobby Clarke would be the downfall. And, of course, we all know that Scott Stevens' dirty hit on Lindros in Game 7 of the Conference Finals in 2000, which was really hard. I mean, I like Scott Stevens. He's a Kitchener Ranger, but I don't condone that. Lindros signed out of the year. He could have been a Leaf, but nope. So the Flyers traded him to the New York Rangers, who got Lindros 10 years too late. And, Lindros played for the Rangers, Leafs, and Stars. Anyhow, the Nordiques fleeced Philly. Steve Duchesne, okay, he was a little bit of a downslope, but he did okay for the 93 Nordiques, being an offensive defenseman. Peter Forsberg, well, that's the big move for the Nordiques. Peter Forsberg was drafted in the 1991 NHL draft, I'd like to say. It was 91, wasn't it? Or 1990? No, it was 91. He was the 5th pick in 91, wasn't he? Or was that 1990? Fuck, I have to check my notes. He was drafted. Yeah, he was. He was the 6th pick in the 91 NHL draft. So he was in that famous 91 draft himself as the Flyers pick. So, yeah. So, They had the rights to him. Forsberg wouldn't come to North America until the 94-95 season and helped won the Calder and helped Quebec, well, moved to Colorado, and Forsberg was that number 2 center behind Joe Sakic. He had a great career. Unfortunately, he had his spleen removed during the 2001 playoffs, which meant he didn't play for the Avalanche, but I think I didn't see him on the cup. So anyway, yeah, Forsberg was great. Quebec got Ron Hextall. I mean, why would the Flyers get rid of Ron Hextall? It's kind of stupid. I guess because of injuries and inconsistency, they got rid of him. He had a good season with Quebec. Unfortunately, though, he would stay 1 year with Quebec and then move to the New York Islanders, help them out, and being swept by the Rangers in the 94 Rangers Cup run. And then he went back to Philadelphia in 1995, and all was well. Kerry Huffman, I dare someone to pick Kerry Huffman, to say Kerry Huffman was a good player. Yeah. Mike Ricci was Quebec royalty. He was good in the 95 season, and then the 96 being the number 3 center behind Zach Forsberg. He did well with San Jose too. He had that long hair and all that. Chris Simon, well, he was an agitator and all that. He was a member of the Mohawk or the Ojibwe tribe. But anyway, yeah, Chris Simon was okay, but unfortunately he had later problems with a 30-game suspension for stomping on someone's foot. I wonder what the first round pick in 93-94 were and all that. I think it was Jeff Keelty and Nolan Baumgartner were the first round picks. So, okay, then they got fleeced. But the $15 million. Now, what about the New York Rangers who could have taken Lindros? Well, apparently the trade was going to have Tony Amonte, Alex Kovalev, Sergei Momchinov, James Patrick, Quebec's choice of goalie between Mike Richter or John Van Beesbrook, undisclosed multiple first-round picks, and $20 million. So can you imagine what would have happened if the Rangers had the offer? I'll be honest with you, the New York Rangers probably would not have won the 94 Stanley Cup, even with Lindros. Because here's why. Amonte and Patrick were used to get key players for the 94 Cup run at the trade deadline. Well, it would have been Van Beesbrook. Well, Richter stayed in New York and played for the 94 Rangers and did very well. One of the best performances by New York Ranger goalie till Lundqvist came along. Van Beesbrook was traded by the Rangers before the 94 season to Vancouver for Doug Lister, and people were confused. But because of the rules of the expansion draft in 93, with Florida and Anaheim coming in, that the Rangers could only protect one goalie, and they decided to get rid of Van Beesbrook so that they could protect Mike Richter and put their other goalies in the system down to possibly being a Panther or a Duck. And Van Beesbrook was drafted by Florida in the expansion draft from Vancouver because Vancouver protected Kirk McLean, but they also wanted to protect Kay Whitmore. Big mistake, Vancouver. Big mistake. Kay Whitmore, what the fuck is he known for? Nothing. Is that Kay Whitmore's agent? Sorry for the beeping. All that. It doesn't matter. So anyway, yeah, that's huge and all that. But here's the thing. They kept Kovalev because the Rangers had a star prospect. I mean, to trade Kovalev was one thing. Kovalev improved himself in 94, and he was pretty good. I mean, yeah, the Rangers traded in Pittsburgh for the one of one Luc Robitaille. Ugh. And Kovalev would go on to do well for Montreal and all that. But, I mean, yeah, Kovalev was around for 94. He was an unheralded piece of that team. And Sergei Momchinov was on the 94 team. He was pretty good. But yeah, Tony Amonte and James Patrick were used for bargaining chips to help the 94 Rangers. James Patrick was disgruntled in New York, and they traded him before the 93-94 season to Hartford for Steve Warmer, who was upset at Chicago management and gave up his consecutive game streak that could have beaten that Jarvis's mark. But anyway, Lorimer was a decent player for that team. And of course, let's not forget, Tony Almonte was one of the biggest bargaining chips of the 94 deadline. They traded him to Chicago, where he would have a pretty good season when he was healthy, for Stefan Matteau and Brian Noonan. Okay, Brian Noonan, not so much. But Stefan Matteau, the guy who scored 2 double overtime winners in the conference final against the New Jersey Devils and helped the Rangers get to the Stanley Cup final in the first place. I mean, still, that is just like, what the heck? So anyway, Lindros was signed a 5-year, $24 million contract, and he had $2 million per year and all that. But Hextall and Ricci actually didn't want to report to Quebec. Well, I can see why, but they relented. The Nordiques made playoffs in '93, could have won their first round matchup with the Montreal Canadiens, but they blew a 2-0 series lead, and then they became Colorado and all that. So yeah, that was huge and all that. So yeah, Lindros did okay and all that. But of course, the Flyers had issues and all that. So anyway, there is actually a trade tree of what happened and all that. Duchesne, he was traded to St. Louis to get Ron Sutter. Ron Sutter was traded to the Islanders in '94 to get Uwe Krupp. And of course, Krupp was the guy who scored the winning goal in the '96 Stanley Cup Finals. And that Islanders first round pick they got back for Sutter was Wade Belak. Wade Belak was then traded to Calgary in '99 to acquire Chris Stingman, who was part of the 2001 Stanley Cup run. Hextall was traded to the Islanders in '93 to get the Islanders' first round pick in '93, which was used to get Adam Denmarsh, who helped Colorado win the Stanley Cup in '96. Then Denmarsh was traded in 2001 to the LA Kings to get Rob Blake at the trade deadline. And Rob Blake and Steven Reinprecht, they were part of the 2001 Stanley Cup run. So, of course, Ricci helped Colorado win the Stanley Cup in '96. Then they were traded to San Jose in '97 to get the first round pick in '98 from the Sharks, which was used for Alex Tanguay to be part of the 2001 Stanley Cup run. Chris Simon's move helped Colorado win the '96 Stanley Cup, but then was traded to Washington during the offseason for Keith Jones. Keith Jones was traded to Philadelphia for Sean Podine, and he was part of the 2001 Stanley Cup run. Philly's first round pick in '93 was for Jocelyn Thibault, so Quebec did their job. Thibault was then traded to Montreal to get Patrick Roy when the team was in Colorado, and Roy helped win the Stanley Cup a couple times. And Mike Keane was also traded to the Avalanche of that deal. So yeah, Mike Keane did his job. The '94 pick for the Flyers was traded to Toronto in '94 to get Wendell Clark. Well, but Sylvain Lefebvre, who also went from Toronto to Quebec, helped them win the '96 Stanley Cup. Clark was traded to the Islanders in '95 to get Claude Lemieux, and Claude Lemieux helped the Avs win the Stanley Cup in '96. Then Claude Lemieux was traded to New Jersey in '99 for Brian Rolston. Brian Rolston was used as part of a bargaining chip to Boston to get Ray Bourque, and we all know Bourque helped Colorado win the Stanley Cup in 2001. So yeah, that's huge. The end result was that Colorado had 2 Stanley Cups by 2001. They had Rob Blake, Ray Bourque, Chris Stingman, Peter Forsberg, Sean Bodine, Steven Reinprecht, Patrick Roy, and Alex Tanguay to do with this move. The Flyers had no Stanley Cup, 1 finals appearance, and Eric Lindros having to sit out the 2001 season. The Rangers had a Stanley Cup and Mike Richter still. So in the end, the Rangers and Avalanche won, and the Flyers lost. And isn't that good news? That is. Anyway, I'm Jun29, and I do